Welcome to IP Concerns Deep Dive, the podcast version of our IP Concerns blog from Cascade Law Group. Here, we unpack intellectual property-related, real business and brand protection topics in a way that actually makes sense, no legal experience required.
Imagine waking up, groggily checking your bank balance on your phone, and you are at, chaseloginupdate.com or something.
Right, which looks completely legitimate when you are half asleep.
Exactly. And then 3 days later, you realize you didn't actually log into your bank. You just handed your password, your security questions, and literally your life savings to a hacker halfway across the world.
Because they bought a domain name that looked almost identical to the real thing. It is a nightmare scenario.
And it happens every single day. But what if your bank could make that scenario technologically impossible? What if they could redraw the fundamental map of the internet so that fakes literally cannot exist?
That is exactly what we're getting into.
Yeah, so today, welcome to the Deep Dive. We are pulling from a really fascinating stack of research notes to explore this quiet, but massive revolution happening right now in the background of the web, the rise of .brand top-level domains.
It really is a fundamental shift in how the internet's architecture is organized. Whether you are listening to this because you are prepping for a tech meeting, or maybe you work in digital marketing, or honestly, you are just insanely curious about how the internet's real estate is being carved up, understanding this shift is crucial.
Totally.
Because the way we navigate the modern web is changing right beneath our feet.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because for decades, since the very beginning of our collective internet experience, we have all relied on standard extensions.
The classics.
Right. You type in a company name, and your fingers just automatically reach for .com, .org, or .net. It is pure muscle memory at this point.
Yeah, we don't even think about it.
But according to the sources we were diving into today, major corporations are now turning their actual trademarks into the domain extension itself.
We are moving away from those massive shared digital spaces and into a world where the brand itself becomes the final destination on the internet.
But before we get into the why of it all, why companies are spending unbelievable amounts of time and money to pull this off, we really need to map out exactly what a .brand is and, the mechanics of how it actually works.
Right, the anatomy of it.
Yeah. Looking at the research, the defining characteristic is pretty simple visually. The brand just sits to the right of the dot.
It sounds so simple when you say it like that.
I know, right? So instead of a company like Google having a standard .com for their corporate info, they have about.google.
Or Amazon using careers.amazon.
Exactly. Or Microsoft using newsroom.microsoft.
And visually, it might seem like a minor cosmetic tweak to the average user typing it in, but structurally, it is a completely different universe.
How so?
Well, to understand how radical this is, you kind of have to look at how the internet resolves an address in the first place. When you type in a URL, you are essentially querying the internet's master phone book.
The DNS system.
Exactly, which relies on DNS root servers. These servers look at the very end of the URL first, so the top-level domain like .com, to figure out where to even route your request.
Okay, so the way I'm picturing it, and tell me if this analogy tracks, securing a traditional .com is basically like renting an apartment in a massive, crowded complex.
Oh, I like that. Yes.
You get your little unit, you put your name on the door, but you are still sharing the building with millions of other people. You have good neighbors, bad neighbors, scammers, running shady businesses out of apartment 4B, whoever.
Right. Anyone can move in.
But getting a .brand is like buying an entire plot of land and building your own private walled city where you are the sole authority.
That is a perfect way to look at it. And the most important part of owning that walled city is that you control the gates. You are no longer a tenant hoping the landlord keeps the riffraff out.
You are the landlord now.
You are the city planner, the mayor, and the heavily armed security force all rolled into one. But to understand how someone even gets the deed to build this private city, we have to look at the global zoning board of the internet.
Which is ICANN.
Yes, ICANN.
The Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. These are the folks who basically manage that root address book we just talked about.
They are the ultimate authority over the internet domain systems. And the shift toward private walled cities isn't an overnight phenomenon. It really kicked off back in 2012.
Right, when ICANN initiated that massive expansion.
Exactly. They expanded what they call generic top-level domains, or GTLDs.
Yeah.
Before that, we were mostly stuck with .com, .net, .org, and country codes like .uk.
So that 2012 window was essentially the first historic land rush for these private digital cities. That gave us custom extensions like .google, .nike, .bbc, and .oz.
Yeah, but what's really fascinating here is that ICANN has recently announced they are reopening applications for a completely new round of custom GTLDs.
So a second gold rush.
A massive second gold rush for digital identity. Companies that missed out a decade ago, or maybe were just scrappy startups back then and are now global juggernauts, they are looking at this new application window as a critical, like once-in-a-decade opportunity to claim their own piece of the Internet's root architecture.
Okay, so if these walled cities offer ultimate control, the obvious question is why companies are so desperate to build them. I mean, building infrastructure is exhausting.
Oh, absolutely.
Why not just stay in the .com apartment complex where everything is already set up for you?
Well, the primary driver, without a doubt, is defense. It all comes down to brand protection and consumer trust, especially in an era where cybercrime is just highly sophisticated and incredibly lucrative.
Yeah, the sources really highlight that. Because the brand owner controls the entire domain space, the entire zip code essentially, customers can trust that any site ending in the company's extension is undeniably authentic.
Right. It drastically reduces phishing risks, impersonation, all those fraudulent websites.
Which makes sense.
Think about the mechanics of a standard phishing attack today. A bad actor registers a domain that looks incredibly similar to a real brand. Maybe they swap a lowercase l for the number 1.
Or they add a hyphen like chaseloginupdate.com.
Exactly. They send out a mass email, and users get tricked into entering their credentials because the fake site looks just like the real .com.
But with the .brand, that entire vector of attack is neutralized from the top down.
Exactly.
Okay, but I have to push back on this a little bit. Let's be real about human psychology and how we actually interact with our screens.
Fair enough. Go ahead.
Let's say you are sitting at your desk, you are stressed out, you are rushing, and you get an urgent email with a glaring red siren icon saying, your account has been compromised. Click here to reset your password immediately.
Right. Panic sets in.
Pure panic. With the adrenaline pumping, is a consumer really going to pause and closely inspect the URL to notice whether it ends in a fake .com versus a legitimate .brand? I mean, we are trained by modern tech to just click, react, and make the red notification badge go away.
You make a really good point. Human error will absolutely always be the weakest link in any cybersecurity chain. You cannot patch human panic.
Right.
But this raises an important question. What happens behind the scenes before the user even had the opportunity to click?
Okay, what do you mean?
The power of the .brand isn't relying on the user's visual recognition in a moment of panic. It lies in the structural control of the domain itself.
So you mean the actual architecture of that walled city blocking the threat before it even reaches my inbox?
Precisely. Because the brand controls the entire ecosystem beneath their extension, they dictate the global security policies for that space. A bad actor cannot go to GoDaddy or any other domain registrar and buy login update .brand.
Because it's locked down.
It is technologically impossible. The central registry simply will not allow the purchase to go through because the registry is the brand itself.
Okay, but hackers are clever. Even if they can't buy the domain, couldn't they just spoof the email's display name? I mean, I get emails all the time where the name says Apple support, even if the hidden email address is just a string of random letters at a .com.
They absolutely try that. But this is where owning the top-level domain gives companies a massive technical advantage. Because they own the root extension, they can implement the strictest possible email authentication protocols across the board.
Which means what, exactly?
There's a system called DMRE, Domain-Based Message Authentication, Reporting, and Conformance. It is essentially a digital wax seal on an envelope.
Oh, I like that. A wax seal that only the king's signet ring can make.
Exactly. When a company uses a standard .com, implementing DMRE perfectly across thousands of employees, third-party vendors, marketing platforms, it is a complete nightmare.
Too many moving parts.
Right, which is why spoofing still happens. But when you own the .brand, you can configure your email servers to tell global internet providers like Gmail or Outlook if an email claims to be from .brand, but it doesn't have our exact, mathematically verified, cryptographic signature.
Block it.
Worse than block it, destroy it immediately. Do not send it to the spam folder. Do not deliver it with a warning banner. obliterate it.
Wow, obliterate it. So it's not just about hoping the consumer spots the fake. It is about making it technologically impossible for the fake email to even reach their inbox in the first place, and impossible for the fake website to exist on the internet.
Exactly. And over time, consumers will be trained by the sheer repetition of safety.
That makes sense.
When every single legitimate interaction with your bank, your healthcare provider, or your software vendor happens on a .brand domain, the presence of that domain becomes a subconscious trust signal.
So you learn that if a URL says support.brand or login.brand, you are safely inside the fortress. Okay, the defense is structural, not just visual. That makes total sense. But security is really only one side of the coin here. Because looking at our notes, here's where it gets really interesting, at least for the creative folks and the builders listening.
Oh yeah, the offensive side.
Right. Our sources point out that .brands also offer a highly aggressive creative advantage for marketing teams.
The offensive play is just as compelling as the defensive one, honestly.
Think about the classic hair-pulling marketing headache we have all experienced or witnessed. A company spends 6 months developing a brilliant new product. They hire an expensive agency to come up with the perfect name, and then they go to register the .com and
It's gone.
it's gone. Somebody else has it.
And it is almost never a legitimate competing business.
No, it is a domain squatter who wants $50,000 for it. Or, actually, there is that famous historical anecdote in our research about Nissan Motors.
Oh, that is a classic case study.
Back in the 90s, Nissan Motors wanted to register Nissan.com. But a guy named Uzi Nissan, who ran a small computer business in North Carolina, had already registered it in 1994 because it was his actual last name.
Naturally.
Nissan Motors spent years in litigation trying to force this guy to hand over the .com, and they lost. So one of the biggest car manufacturers on Earth had to settle for Nissanusa.com.
Which just dilutes their global brand presence.
Completely.
That kind of digital scarcity completely handcuffs a company's ability to communicate clearly.
But with a .brand, that scarcity just vanishes into thin air. The sources highlight this beautifully. Companies gain complete, infinite control over their naming structure. They can create clean, highly memorable addresses instantly.
We are talking about intuitive URLs like events.brand, shop.brand, or careers.brand.
And if we look at the operational side of that, the agility it provides internally is incredible. When you want to launch a new product, you don't have to go through a 6-week procurement process to buy a new domain.
You don't have to negotiate with squatters or set up new hosting.
Right. The marketing team can just create a custom subdomain on the fly within their own registry.
Summersale.brand. Boom, it is live by Tuesday afternoon.
Exactly.
And beyond just speed, it builds a highly cohesive digital customer experience. Look at a company that is actively using this right now, like Apple.
Oh, yeah.
You can go to macbook.apple, or Audi, where you can go to testdrive.audi.
That looks so clean.
It really does. And whether a customer is reading corporate news, applying for a job, or customizing a car, they never leave that branded ecosystem. The digital journey feels entirely seamless and, more importantly, entirely controlled by the company.
It is basically the ultimate flex in digital real estate, which logically leads us to the catch.
There is always a catch.
If .brands solve massive cybersecurity vulnerabilities and they eliminate annoying marketing bottlenecks so elegantly, the obvious question is why my local bakery or a mid-sized tech startup hasn't abandoned their .com.
Right.
Like, why isn't every business rushing to ICANN right now to get one?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to look at the staggering barriers to entry here. Obtaining a .brand is vastly different from jumping onto a registrar website and buying a regular domain for $20.
The walled city doesn't come cheap, I'm guessing, and ICANN doesn't just hand out the deeds to anyone who asks.
Definitely not. The application process is highly technical, deeply complex, and incredibly expensive. You are essentially applying to run a piece of the internet's core global infrastructure.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics of that,
Yeah.
because the sources outline a gauntlet of specific hurdles. First off, you can't just apply for a word you kind of like.
No, not at all.
You have to prove absolute, undeniable trademark ownership globally.
Which typically involves navigating the Trademark Clearinghouse. That is a centralized, ICANN-verified database of global intellectual property.
Sounds intense.
It is. It's not just a filing cabinet. It is an active global tripwire. ICANN cross-references your claim to ensure you are the legally recognized owner of that IP in multiple jurisdictions.
So if someone else has a legitimate claim to that word in another industry or another country,
Your application can just grind to a halt.
wow. So the legal paperwork alone is a massive mountain. But then you hit the technical hurdle. The sources say you have to either operate or appoint a registry operator. Let's extend our walled city metaphor here. What exactly does a registry operator do?
So ICANN grants you the legal deed to the land, right? But the registry operator is the entity physically building the roads, maintaining the power grid, checking the passports at the gate. They are the technical back end that makes the domain extension function flawlessly on the global internet.
So they manage the actual DNS root servers we talked about earlier?
Exactly. They handle the servers, they enforce the uptime guarantees so your piece of the internet never goes dark, and they manage the heavy cybersecurity protocols required by ICANN.
And if they fail,
If your registry operator servers go down, your entire .brand city disappears from the global map. No emails come in, no websites load.
that is a lot of pressure.
It really is. You are taking on massive, ongoing operational duties to keep a slice of the internet running safely.
You aren't just registering a name, you are literally becoming a mini infrastructure provider.
And that infrastructure comes with substantial application fees to ICANN. We are talking fees that run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars just to apply.
Wait, just to apply.
Just to apply, with no guarantee of success. Plus, you have the ongoing registry management costs and strict continuous compliance audits. You have to prove to ICANN every single year that you are running this digital space securely and according to their global rules.
Jeez. So going back to my local bakery, or even a well-funded, scrappy startup, this is completely out of reach. The sheer weight of the internet infrastructure required basically crushes the return on investment for anyone but a major corporation.
Exactly. For many small and medium-sized businesses, traditional domains remain the only realistic option. The cost and bureaucratic weight of managing a top-level registry simply don't make sense unless you operate at a massive global scale.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this right now? When we synthesize this entire stack of sources, a very clear narrative emerges. The rise of dotBrands really reflects the ongoing aggressive evolution of how intellectual property is merging with digital architecture.
It is the maturation of the internet. We are watching the web transition from this chaotic shared frontier into a heavily structured, authenticated environment, at least, at the corporate enterprise level.
Right, and for those large companies, the exorbitant ICANN fees, the legal battles at the trademark clearinghouse, the cost of running registry operators, it is all worth it.
Every penny.
Because in today's digital economy, online trust, cybersecurity, and absolute brand control have transitioned from being nice-to-have luxuries to being vital core strategic assets. You simply cannot put a price tag on guaranteeing your customers aren't being phished or, giving your marketing team infinite real estate.
You are building an impenetrable fortress.
So the next time you are browsing the web and you see a URL that ends in .google, .apple, or .brand, you will know exactly what you are looking at.
You will understand the massive invisible machinery behind it.
The incredible expense and the deep strategic maneuvering that went into creating that simple web address.
And it actually leaves us with something quite profound to consider regarding the future of how we navigate the web.
Oh, what's that?
Well, if dotBrands do successfully become the ultimate undeniable gold standard for consumer safety and authenticity, right? If they become the only digital spaces where we truly know, without a shadow of a doubt, that we are safe from spoofing and phishing,
Yeah.
will we eventually reach a tipping point where consumers begin to actively distrust any major global corporation that still relies on a standard .com?
Oh, wow.
Think about the apartment complex analogy one last time. If all the major banks, healthcare systems, and tech institutions move out and build their own secure, walled cities, does the shared .com apartment complex eventually just become perceived as a bad neighborhood?
That is wild. If a massive global bank is still using a standard .com in 10 years, will we subconsciously assume they just don't care enough about our security to build the wall?
It is a very real possibility.
That is a fascinating way to look at the future of the internet. So next time you type in a .com, maybe ask yourself who else has the keys to that building. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we will catch you next time.